What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the shelf, and today we are talking about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 6, The Price. Well, guys, it feels to me like that 7 weeks went really fast. I don't know about you, but I mean, it's practically almost over, and you know, I'm gonna miss it. When this show had begun to air, I was very excited because for me personally, I hadn't really felt like we'd had any really good appointment television in a while, so it's very fleeting, but you know, you gotta appreciate it while it's on. So I'm gonna talk about the episode, and then at the end of the video, I'll talk a little bit about where I think we're at, you know, with this show and everything. And I actually do now have, again, some more issues, some more concerns that we'll go into. So the episode begins with a flashback to the year 1983, and we see Joel and Tommy as kids, or I guess teenagers, and we also get a look at their father, who was either like a kind of a deputy or a sheriff or something like that in the town that they lived in Texas, I believe. So basically this episode shows how early on Joel developed this protector role that he's seemed to carry with him throughout his life. We see him stepping in to defend his brother from their father after Tommy got himself into some trouble. And, you know, Joel doesn't want to see his brother getting beat on by their dad, naturally. This feels like a very naturalistic role for an older brother to fall into. So it does feel pretty true to life, and it does some work as far as laying the background and the foundation for Joel as a character. One thing I found significant in this scene is that we see that Joel's dad is wearing the watch that he wears throughout the show. It's the same watch that Sarah in season 1 would then get fixed by the watch repairman, and then Joel will wear throughout the rest of the show. It's the same one that, you know, he's wearing when Sarah's dead, and I believe it's even chipped from the gunshots that took Sarah's life, if I'm not mistaken. So not only does that watch now have all that significance from, you know, Sarah repairing it and gifting it to him on his birthday, but it also has these ties back to his father. So it's significant on more levels than we previously anticipated. And it's an addition from the game. I don't believe that's in the game at all. So I do think that's a pretty welcome inclusion, and it's something that I caught and was able to appreciate. So then the rest of the first half of this episode, following that early flashback, is we get these looks in on 3 different, or maybe even 4 different birthdays that Ellie has throughout the time that her and Joel have spent together. So first we see Ellie's 15th birthday, where Joel is making her this guitar. He's very intricately working on this thing and just applying some real craftsmanship to it. And he, you know, carves the moth into the fretboard and everything, and it looks really cool, and it's a cool scene. And I believe that's an addition from the game as well, so that's further giving this guitar a lot more significance behind it, because I believe in the game, Joel just finds it at a music store and then brings it back, where in the show, you know, we've obviously established that Joel has a bit of a hobby for woodworking, so it makes sense that he would be able to figure out how to make a guitar as well. So I thought that was a nice organic addition. Joel also gets a cake made for Ellie. He trades some Legos to Seth for this vanilla cake, which I would imagine in the zombie apocalypse is a very rare commodity, not something that, you know, they're having every night. So even more significant, and, you know, probably something that most people, if they're not actively thinking about it, might dismiss as not being more of an act of love than it would be. Like, obviously you and I can just go down and get a cake, right? But, you know, these ingredients are very valuable, I would imagine. So then we get a year later for Ellie's 16th birthday, where we basically get the entire recreated scene from the game, where Ellie and Joel go to this museum, they see the dinosaur, Ellie goes into the spaceship, and, you know, Joel plays her the tape that he's got of all, you know, the radio transmissions that they had. All really great stuff. I don't have too much to add to this that hasn't already been said. It's recreated very well from the game to the show. No notes. This has got really great stuff, really great character stuff. And as they mention in the making of section of the episode, it's important to notice and, you know, think about how much this is the happiest Ellie and Joel will ever be together. They'll never get back to these heights, basically. Like, this was the best, most pure their relationship had ever been. Probably even since before the events at Salt Lake City, I think. Because even though despite that friction that they have from that, they're still able to, for the time being, kind of bury that for a while. And eventually it does come back up, but for now, things are good and they're content. So yeah, it's a bittersweet scene with that context in mind. So then we flash forward again to Ellie's 17th birthday, where Joel is yet again coming home with a cake for Ellie, where he walks in on her fooling around with this girl. They're smoking weed. The girl had just given Ellie a tattoo. Yeah, Joel obviously comes in and walks in on all that, and it's a lot for him to process naturally, right? Because this is kind of where Joel first gets the idea that Ellie might be into girls, which on its face, not really a problem, but when you're struck with that so immediately and it kind of catches you out of nowhere from a father perspective, that can be something that you kind of have to wrap your head around for a minute. You know, that's not something that you're going to be able to just kind of process and accept right away as a father figure, right? Obviously, it's different for people in different relationships with Ellie, but having that dynamic of father and daughter with Joel and Ellie, it's something that he processes uniquely to the way that you or I might, because, you know, someone tells me that they like girls, and obviously that's fine. I don't care. It's whatever. But if I happen to be that person's father or mother or what have you, that's a whole different conversation. So Joel's struck with not only that, but, you know, the weed stuff and the tattoo and everything. So yeah, he takes it harshly in that moment. So this is where they begin to really start to grow apart. Things from here on out kind of aren't going as well as they had been in years prior. Because as Ellie's aging, she's, you know, doing the thing that teenagers do where they rebel and, you know, they begin to ask questions and they're trying to figure themselves out. And they're a lot less likely to accept people's bullshit, and they're more likely to call you out on it. And Ellie is becoming more resentful. She's becoming more distant because she's got these things that she can't square. She's having these doubts that she has to get closure on, because otherwise it's going to continue to eat her up. And at this point, she really can't continue to act like everything's okay anymore. So then we fast forward 2 years to Ellie's 19th birthday. Joel comes by and he lets Ellie know that he's cleared her to start going on patrols, which is something that Ellie's been wanting to do for a while. She knows that she can be more useful to the community in that capacity, as opposed to some of the more menial, mindless, you know, kind of labor that she's been doing, basically. So that's important for her. She's excited about that. She responds well to that, right? That could be a sign that things are going in a more positive direction, but then what unfolds also happens. So that kind of throws a wrench in things. So yeah, they're on patrol, and then they get the call on the radio that Eugene needs some backup. So the two of them go to meet Eugene, and some shit had gone down, basically. The person who was on patrol with Eugene is dead, and Eugene himself is bitten. So Eugene's a character that we've been getting hints about up until this point in the season. We've been hearing things about him. We've met his wife, Gail. This is the episode, finally, we've been waiting for, where we figure out exactly what happened to him. I had presumed, just based on the context that we had, that what happens is that Eugene is bitten and Joel has to kill him. But we didn't know the how, the why, you know, the when, all of that additional context that makes this actually a lot more gray than I thought it might have come out to be. It's not black and white at all. So this is actually a decision that I don't know if I agree with 100%, because basically Ellie and Joel encounter Eugene, right? And they are not terribly far away from Jackson. That's important to keep in mind, because Eugene wants to go back. He knows he has some time, maybe an hour, to go and say goodbye to his wife, Gail, for the last time. Ellie's for it. She's down. She's willing to help him. But Joel doesn't even seem like he wants to consider this as an option, and decides that, no, that's not a thing that's going to happen, and Joel needs to take him out right now. I guess it's the rules of Jackson that there's protocols for these sorts of things, And when these situations pop up, there's things that they need to do. And apparently bringing Eugene back to Jackson is not one of them, because there is a possibility that he could infect others, specifically Gale, which obviously he wouldn't want. So it's a tricky moral quandary, right? Which is sort of the name of the game when it comes to The Last of Us. So my thing is, the way that this is carried out makes Joel feel like a really cruel character. And I'll explain why. Basically, Ellie and Joel could have handled Eugene. He's an old man. He's literally dying. These two are very capable. There's really no reason why they couldn't have taken Eugene outside the borders of Jackson and had Gale come out and spoken to him from a distance or something. You know, even if they couldn't have physically touched, this is a thing that they could have done. And not only, let's say Joel doesn't even want to do it for Eugene, but it's very clear that this is something that Ellie cares deeply about, and she really would like to see this carried out. And so I would think that Joel trying to kind of repair the relationship a little bit would behoove him to do this not only for Joel or Eugene, who's literally dying, but he should also do this for Ellie. Kill two birds with one stone kind of deal. So by adding this plot line to the show, you've kind of put me in a situation where I would make the argument that TV Joel is a lot more cruel than game Joel, just because of all these additional situations that the show is putting him in. And I understand why he does it, because he doesn't want to infect the community. He doesn't want Ellie to be put in danger. So he has his reasons, but they're flawed, and I'll explain even further why. So basically, Joel has this problem of thinking that he knows what's best for everyone around him, and he takes people's decisions away from them in situations where having them have autonomy has never mattered more than it has in these moments. I'm talking about when Ellie had given, if she had been given the choice, might have sacrificed herself for the greater good to potentially make a cure. She never gets that decision. Joel takes it. Eugene wants to say goodbye to Gale, doesn't get that option. Joel takes it away from him. And Joel lies to Ellie and basically makes the same sort of promise to her that he did when he swore to her that, you know, the things that he said about what happened in Salt Lake City are actually what happened. He says the same things to her when he promises Ellie that he's gonna let Eugene live and go see Gale. It's the same thing, and it's what allows Ellie to recognize that her suspicions have been right and Joel has been lying to her this whole time. And this is really the catalyst for, you know, what comes next and, you know, sort of what places them where they are by the end of this episode. So the actor who plays Eugene, Joe Pantoliano, I think is how you say his name, he's really good, and he doesn't get a lot of screen time, obviously, but he does so much with the little screen time that he has. And he's really good at making us feel how scared he is in that moment. Joel says to him that if he has any final words for Gale, that, you know, he'll relay them to her. And Eugene's like, final words for her? He's like, I need my final words from her. Like, I need her to console me right now. Like, he's basically being very vulnerable and explaining, like, dude, I'm terrified and I need her to comfort me right now. And you're denying that from me. And I'm literally dying and it's my final wish. And it just makes Joel feel very cruel. And it's like, again, I understand why he's doing it, but there's no reason why they couldn't have done this. There really isn't. And it makes it hard for me to get behind this decision. Like, the decision that he makes regarding Ellie and the Salt Lake City thing and the cure, I understand that a little better. It's a little more palatable because I've played the game, so it's like I've had time to kind of ruminate on this moral quandary for years and years at this point. But I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about this. I think it makes Joel out to be even more worse of a guy than I think the show perhaps wanted you to think. For me, anyway. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I kind of had a problem with this, to be honest. As it was unfolding, I was like, I don't back this at all. Which I guess is the point of the episode. And then Eugene says that I want to see her face one last time, meaning Gail, his wife. And Joel says, if you love someone, you can always see their face. And again, that rang very cruel to me, because obviously Joel is referring to his dead daughter, Sarah, who died many years ago, and how even though she's gone, he can still see her face. And it's just such a false equivalency, because Eugene's wife, Gail, is very much alive still, and if he, had the means, if the circumstances were different, he could go and see her face. So that felt like a very cruel thing to say to Eugene in that moment. And even though Eugene then goes on to say, I can see her, right before Joel shoots him, that made it even worse to me. That made it feel sad. Like, Joel was like, yeah, sorry, dude. Best you're going to be able to do is your own internal memory. So that's all you got. And he recognizes that, and he says, okay, guess I got to make do. And that just made it even more sad. Like, that made it feel even more fucked up to me. But so then, they get back to Jackson. They're dragging Eugene behind the horse the same way that, eventually Joel would be carried behind, Tommy, Ellie, and Dina at the end of episode 2, which was a nice little visual sort of, connectivity there. So yeah, and then they get back to Jackson with Eugene's body, and again, Joel is deciding that he knows what's best, and he's going to tell Gail what he thinks that she should hear. And it's really, it's admirable in a sense, because he's got her best interests at heart, and he wants her to have these very, positive memories about the way Eugene went out. But the reality is that given the chance, or given the choice rather, Gail would want to know the truth, as opposed to Joel's fictionalized version of the events. And so again, it's these moral things where it's like, yeah, you might think you know what's best, but ultimately what you're doing is robbing people of their autonomy and their ability to make decisions for themselves. And it's very interesting to think about, but ultimately the reality is that no matter how you slice it, Joel is, again, making a mistake. He's doing the wrong thing. And Ellie recognizes this, and angrily, she undercuts him and says, no, Gail, that's not what happened, and goes on to tell her what really went down. And so Catherine O'Hara is really great in this scene. She's totally broken, totally vulnerable. You go from witnessing her being so grateful for Joel, and then all of a sudden, she's like repulsed by him after Ellie reveals what really happened. And she switches kind of like on a dime, and you just feel for her so much, because not only is she having to deal with the death of her husband, but now she's having to, deal with the fact that Joel is lying about what happened, which is like so fucked up in its own way. So yeah, this is where we leave Ellie and Joel prior to the events of the New Year's Eve party, which we then cut, and we spend the last, the final moments of the episode here. But we're witnessing these events again, but from a different perspective, and with the added context of, all the things that have led up to it. So we witness everything play out, Seth being a bigot, yada yada, I don't need your fucking help, Joel, all that stuff, right? And then we cut back to the moment where Joel is strumming along on his guitar after the New Year's Eve party, and Ellie approaches him, and, they start off by having a little bit of small talk to kind of try to disarm each other, leading up to, the real elephant in the room that they need to address, right? So basically it all comes out, and Ellie is confronting Joel about what happened in Salt Lake City, and she's basically giving him this ultimatum where, she's giving him one last chance to tell her the truth, or that's it, their relationship is over for good. Pedro Pascal's acting in this scene, as well as Bella Ramsey, they're both phenomenal, because Ellie's basically giving him these yes or no questions, and Pedro's just wordlessly, nodding or shaking his head, and he's just breaking down, and he's crying silently, and he's just getting more of a mess as he's having to reveal more information to Ellie. The fact that there weren't more immune people, the fact that he killed Marlene, like all these things that Ellie's been thinking about and, basically all her worst fears are being confirmed as being true. It's a really effective scene. But Joel goes on to say that he would do it all again if given the chance. He's making these decisions for a reason, and it's because he loves Ellie in a way that Ellie can't understand. But if she should ever understand, if she should ever have one of her own, he hopes that she'll do a little better than him, which echoes the thing that Joel's dad said to him in the very beginning of the episode, and now he's saying it to her at the end of the episode. And it's like poetry, it rhymes, you know, like George Lucas said. And yeah, it's a really great scene. Everything, it's very poetic. And then Ellie says that, you know, she doesn't think she can forgive him, but she would like to try. And that's where Ellie and Joel left off right before he died the next day at the hands of Abby. Very bittersweet. So then the episode ends with Ellie in the modern day returning back to the theater after torturing Nora, and presumably she got an answer as to where Abby is. We don't know yet because we cut away from the torture scene, so we don't know what's going to happen as far as that. But yeah, that's where we leave off going into the final episode of season 2. So good episode, but I also have some issues. I have some concerns again, because since last week, we've now gotten news from Craig Mazin that now he's saying that there's no way they can finish this story without a 4th season. So not only is season 3 going to also be about The Last of Us Part 2, but now season 4 is also going to be finishing that story. Which makes sense because in the timeline of events in the game, we still have a lot of stuff to cover, to talk about and get through. So in a sense, it makes sense, but it's also like, why did you only do a 7-episode season? I'm pretty confident you could have done the full Part 2 game in 2 seasons, but just make each season 10 episodes, like you did with season 1. And then furthermore, if you can make 3 seasons worth of show out of the second game, well, surely you could have made 2 seasons out of the first game, right? So it's always going to sit weird with me that we have season 1, which covers the first game, and then seasons 2, 3, and 4 are all the second game. Like, yeah, the second game is a lot longer than the first game, but it's not 3 seasons longer, like, or 2 seasons longer. Whatever the equivalency is going to come out to be, like, it's just very odd to me. I don't understand that decision necessarily. And then, of course, as I've been saying, it's going to be 2 years until season 3, and then it's going to be another 2 years until season 4. So it's like, I want to be fucking like 35 by the time this show's over, man. And I feel like they're dragging it out a little bit, and I don't agree with that. I don't appreciate that. As someone who watches TV, it's just not a decision I can get behind. But anyway, I've kind of ranted about that in prior videos about this show, so I won't go too much into that. But yeah, this one's already running pretty long. Those are all my thoughts. Reserving final judgment until after the 7th episode, because then I'll have the full picture. I'll have a better sense of what seasons 3 and 4 are going to look like now that we know there's apparently going to be a season 4. I think a lot of us assumed that season 3 was going to finish this story out, but now everything's up in the air again, and now I don't know what to think, because originally, like I said, I thought it was only going to be 3 seasons, and so, I don't know. Anyway, guys, that is my thoughts on The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 6, The Price. Overall, very good episode. I really enjoyed this episode a lot. So, yeah, leave your thoughts and opinions on the show, on this episode, down in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what you guys are thinking. I always enjoy hearing other perspectives. So like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't. We talk about new movies, old movies, television, physical media, and horror in general. So with all that being said, guys, please take care and watch more movies.